Reaching for Research by Students for Students was created by the BIO5 Institute to introduce our experiences to undergraduate and high school students interested in working in research labs. Listen as our guests describe their path to STEM and their current work, so you too might join a lab and discover more within the world of science. Hi everyone, and welcome to this episode of Reaching for Research by Students for Students. My name is Jordan Pilch, and I am a senior here at the University of Arizona, studying molecular and cellular biology and microbiology. I also work here at the BIO5 Institute as a public affairs student assistant. Today, we welcome Grace Hala'ufia. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Of course.
Do you want to give the audience a little bit of an introduction about yourself?
Yeah, so as she said, my name is Grace Hala'ufia. I'm a junior here at the University of Arizona, and I'm studying neuroscience and psychology with a minor in biochem. And I also am a member of the Zarnescu lab here on campus.
Awesome. So to get us started, this is kind of like an introductory question. What was your journey through STEM? How did you get to your current research position? Kind of that sort of thing.
Yeah, so surprisingly enough, through high school, STEM not necessarily was something that I was really focused on. However, I did kind of get more into it when a friend of mine actually recommended me into a program here at the U of A known as the Keys program, where essentially you get paired up with a faculty member here on campus and you kind of do research alongside of them and develop a poster. And during that summer, I kind of just fell in love with the process of research and just discovery in general. It was a great experience for me, and then that was actually how I ended up in the lab that I currently am in today. So I've been in this lab. This is going to be my third year in the Zarnescu lab.
That's a long time. You said that STEM really wasn't your focus in high school. What were you doing in high school outside of STEM?
Yeah, I actually played a lot of viola. I actually thought I was going to be a viola performance
That's
major
so
for a
cool.
while. Yeah. But then, that didn't necessarily work out, and I mean, while I love viola, I'm kind of glad that that door closed because it led me to STEM, which I love.
Did you ever think about minoring in viola or minoring in music here?
Yeah, it definitely crossed my mind, but I just wanted to kind of keep viola as a side passion, and I didn't want to necessarily get burnt out from it. So yeah,
that is definitely a big thing, especially with research and everything as well.
Yes.
Have you encountered any obstacles or dealt with any uncertainty kind of coming into STEM? You said that it was kind of very sudden that you got introduced to keys.
Mm-hmm.
Was there any obstacles that you had to overcome to feel comfortable in that STEM role?
Yeah, for sure. Definitely in keys, and towards the beginning of my undergraduate career, I had a lot of imposter syndrome, kind of feeling, it's an intimidating place. I worked a lot at BIO5 during my keys place. It almost feels like I'm just this small little undergraduate floating in this, world of STEM. So in that sense, I did kind of feel behind, and a lot of the fellow interns, they did all these crazy, AP science courses, and I didn't have as much of a background as they did. But something that kind of helped me is just, realizing that, you're selected for a reason, you're kind of, in the spot where you're at for a reason. So I think it's just with experience, and that kind of develops your confidence, and that kind of gets rid of the imposter syndrome, which I think is a pretty big thing in STEM.
Are you feeling like less of an imposter now? Because 100% you are not. We asked you here, so obviously you've made it in some way or another.
Yeah, it definitely has gone away. And like I said, I think with experience and just over time, you kind of just get a sense that you belong somewhere, and I think I've really found that just in my lab in general as well.
I love that. Yeah. I'm so glad.
Yeah.
Talking about your lab, what are you currently working on? What is Dr. Zarnescu doing? Just kind of a global overview of the lab, and then what specifically are you working on?
Yeah, so our lab as a whole looks a lot at the cellular mechanisms that underlie amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, or ALS, also known as Lou Gehrig's disease. And we actually use the model organism of the fruit fly to do our research. We do a lot of the little guys running around your trash. We do research on them.
They're useful for something.
They really are. They really are. We're more similar to them than what most people think. But yeah, so
really, how similar are we?
Well, I don't know the exact thing, but I remember seeing a phylogenetic tree. It was like Drosophila right here, and human was just a few branches down, and I was like,
That's so crazy.
yeah, it's really interesting stuff. But so they do a lot of work with ALS, and specifically what our team works on is because frontotemporal dementia shares a lot of overlapping, cellular pathologies with ALS. We're trying to develop that model organism of the fruit fly to sort of apply also to frontotemporal dementia. So that's what we're working on right now. And because FTD kind of affects more of your cognitive behavioral side rather than the motor neurons as ALS does, we're kind of developing some new assays to sort of test any changes of behavior or sort of cognitive ability in a fly to see if the fly can be used for dementia as well as ALS.
It's awesome that you're working on a model organism like that. So that was a lot all at once for me. What is frontal temporal dementia?
Yeah, so it's basically a subset of dementia. I'm sure a lot of people have heard of Alzheimer's. It's really similar to that, but it affects a lot more of your personality, aggression levels, things along that nature. So it's sort of just a progressive, neurodegeneration of behavior. So we have things, like I said, like aggression. We also have people have changes in appetite, disrupted sleep patterns, and also disrupted working memory.
I didn't know that those could be caused by neurodegeneration. That's really interesting. I don't know whether or not that's the correct word, but we're going to go with interesting. And you're kind of trying to create a fly that exhibits those same symptoms. So what you're saying is that there isn't currently a model organism for studying. You said that it's TFD?
FTD.
I got this.
It's all good. It takes a while, but there are model organisms for it, but not necessarily one that is such easily manipulated as the fruit fly, because the fruit fly, very cost effective, easy to manipulate, like I said. So we're just hoping that we can get that same sort of effect in the fruit fly, like for modeling a different disease rather than just ALS.
Okay, and something that is more on the scientific side that's interesting to me, you said that there's a lot of similar pathologies with ALS, but this is much more the neurodegenerative cognitive side versus the motor side of things.
Yeah.
Does your lab, or do you know why they're so linked, even though they have such different symptomatic presentations?
Yeah, that is something that's pretty interesting. As far as why they're linked, my guess is just the fact that they both have just a progressive decline in brain function, but what that brain function is, it sort of manifests itself differently.
Okay.
And also I think, they have the similar pathologies. So one that we focus on a lot is the aggregation of TDP43, which is a protein that's usually involved in, RNA processing. And in ALS, it's found to be just sort of aggregated in motor neurons, and in FTD, 50% of FTD patients is found to be aggregated in the frontal and temporal lobes.
Okay, and aggregated just means collected?
Yep,
or
just
bunched up?
really bunched up to the point where it's just like a toxic gain of function.
Oh,
yeah.
That's unfortunate. Well, that has been a lot about what you're doing in your work within STEM. Outside of that, what are things that you like to do throughout your week to go through and kind of keep you motivated?
Yeah, well, actually, I'm also part of the track team here at the U of A. I throw shot put and discus. Yeah, so it's a great outlet for me to sort of just, let out everything. And also, it does keep me motivated. I do have 8 a.m. practices multiple days a week, so that gives me a reason to wake up, to make sure I'm not late.
Yeah. Make sure everything's doing good.
Yeah.
And then you get to throw things a really far distance. I know absolutely nothing about shot put, discus. Why did you get into it? How did you get into it?
Yeah, actually, I was mostly, I was a pretty big sports kid in high school. I mainly focused on basketball and volleyball and track. I did track all 4 years, but it was just sort of a side thing. And then junior, senior year, I started to just get a little better at it. And senior year came around, and I contacted the coach here, and he liked what he saw when he came down here to watch me throw. So, yeah, it was kind of a curveball for me too. I was not expecting to be doing sports in college, but that's just sometimes how things work. Surprises come along, and I'm so glad that I got into it because it's like such a big part of my life now, and it's great.
I'm so glad.
Yeah.
So do you work with the track team on a lot of things? Because basketball and volleyball, very big team sports and everything.
Yeah.
How was the transition over to more solo sports, but still kind of working on a team?
Yeah, I actually really like the individual aspect of track because you're kind of responsible for yourself. You know, whatever you do, if you're progressing, if you're declining, that's on you. But the great thing about, you know, the throwers in particular is we're all still very much, you know, like a family. You see each other at practices all the time. You're around each other at weights, so you just kind of form this like little community, and it's just really nice. So you still kind of get the benefits of being on a team because I'm so close to a lot of the fellow throwers, but it's just kind of nice to focus on yourself and your own improvements in track.
That's really motivating. Yeah. I love that.
Yeah.
Okay, we have one last question for you, and it's kind of a two-part question, so it's kind of two, but we're going to say that it's one. What advice would you give to your 16-year-old self, and what advice would you give to somebody who is trying to join a research lab?
So advice to my 16-year-old self, definitely, I mean, this is kind of corny, but just don't take life too seriously. Like, you know, when you're 16 years old, you really think you're just this big person, like, I don't know where to go to college, like, what about my SAT scores, you know, all of this stuff. But it really is not that, like, it's not that deep. Enjoy, you know, being, you know, a little younger without all this responsibility that you have, and just don't take life too seriously. That's
really interesting to hear all of this, which you definitely hear from, like, the adults that are like, yes, enjoy your teenage years, and then you fully have, like, a 20 and a 21-year-old if you're like, no, seriously, take them. Please. It's only been a few years, do it. It's good.
Yeah, once you hit your 20s, it's a little scary. But
being an adult is hard.
We're
agree. Trying.
Yeah. And then advice that I would give to someone joining a lab, don't be afraid to reach out to anyone. Just take the plunge. If you're scared, just go for it, because the worst that could happen, they say no, and that's basically the same spot that you would be at if you hadn't reached out. I would also, some advice, get involved in programs. I highly recommend the Keys research internship.
Keys. Yeah. Do Keys. The
Shameless
application
plug.
is open when we're recording this. I don't know if it'll be open when we've done it, but like, do Keys.
Yeah, internships and programs like that really develop you as not just a scientist, but as an individual. I learned a lot in Keys, and it's really, like, without it, I would not be here. So yeah, I highly recommend getting involved in a program and just not being afraid to reach out.
100%. I feel that so much. I really like what you mentioned when you said, even if they say no, you would just be in the exact same position that you were in before. That is a really good tip to go through and get over that kind of hurdle of, I'm scared that they're going to say no to me, because that can sometimes be a real fear that you do have to get over and kind of surmount to be able to send the email in the first place. So thank you so much for that piece of advice. It is saying no, you'll be in the exact same position, so you will have lost nothing. You'll be totally okay. Thank you so much. I absolutely loved doing this. This was so much fun.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This was also a lot of fun for me too.
I really enjoy this. Okay, thank you for listening to this episode of Reaching for Research by students for students. And thank you once again to Grace.
Of course.
Have a good day, everybody.
Bye.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for listening to this episode of Reaching for Research. Today, we listened to Grace, who talked a lot about her experience both as a Keys intern and as an undergraduate. If you're interested in learning more about Keys, I suggest you go to keys.arizona.edu. Unfortunately, the application for this year has closed, but if you're interested in attending in summer 2023, I suggest you check it out starting in October of next year. And with that, we can't wait to see where you go in the world of science.